This research project is titled Smartphone Use and Social Media, Digital Strategies to Reduce Screen Time. My name is Santiago Grandas, and this study was done as part of my undergraduate research thesis project. This research project starts from the observation of a college student, that is myself. As a college student, I could see that smartphone use had permeated essentially every aspect of our lives, and smartphone use and social media use was present during eating times in the dining hall, during classes, even while people were walking and in athletic locker rooms. And I think everyone who has been around a college campus in recent years can agree with this. The overall presence of smartphone use and their prevalence led me to ask the question of how is social media affecting our mental health? And more importantly, what can we do to manage the time we spend on our phones? The evidence and the data are very clear. Smartphone use and social media use are on the rise and have been significantly on the rise in recent years. In 2009, 50% of teenagers used social media daily, and in 2022, that number rose to 95%. Additionally, 95% of teenagers report owning a smartphone today. Other research leads us to think that these figures are very similar in young adults and college-aged people. According to research, young people are spending large amounts of time on their phones, with some spending up to 7 and even 9 hours per day. Research has also linked excessive smartphone use to a number of negative outcomes, such as increased anxiety, poor sleep quality, low life satisfaction, and reduced cognitive capacity. Similar research has found that people generally struggle to change smartphone use habits. So, despite individuals characterizing their phone use as problematic, as addictive, and as excessive, people fail to make any real changes. And a lot of young people who wish to spend less time on their phones often fail to do so on their own. Data from the Pew Research Center found that 54% of teens say it would be hard to give up social media, and 36% of them think they spend way too much time on social media. In short, people are aware of their excessive phone use, yet they fail to make any real changes. The current landscape regarding social media use and smartphone use led me to ask the question of how can psychological science help individuals manage their phone use and their social media consumption? Doing a review of the literature, I found that digital nudges are a low-cost alternative readily available on almost any smartphone and free of cost. So on image number 2, which corresponds to screen time limits, we can see an example of an active nudge that forces the user to make a decision whether to keep on browsing an app or to exit an app after a certain time has passed. Image number 3 shows a grayscale setting, which is a form of passive nudge. Passive nudges incorporate design friction and make it harder for users to interact with technology, and therefore it may promote more mindful interactions. Research has found that both of these types of interventions are usually effective in helping people reduce the amount of time they spend on their phones. Additionally, research has found that just self-monitoring your screen time, like on image number 1, so just being aware of how much time you're spending on your phone, is not effective enough to create any actual changes. In the UC community, in a college campus, regarding digital nudges. I wanted to address the questions of how do digital interventions work in a college context. I wanted to see if they were effective in just 1 week, as previous research has focused on longer term interventions. I wanted to look at social media specifically and see how it changed. And I also wanted to explore the relationship between mental health and phone use, so I included an anxiety measure. Therefore, my hypothesis is that both of the experimental interventions will reduce phone and social media use in just 1 week. Ultimately, the present research study seeks to empower individuals to make conscious choices about their screen time and to provide them with evidence-based tools that are easy to access and free of cost. So for my research design, I proposed and I conducted an independent group's longitudinal design over the course of 1 week with 3 conditions that can be seen on screen. So number 1 is the self-monitor condition, which acts as a control group, where participants are simply asked to monitor the screen time over 1 week. Number 2 is screen time limits, where participants get to choose 3 social media apps and set a screen time limit of their choosing. And number 3, a grayscale setting, where participants are asked to use their phones in a grayscale setting for 1 week. My dependent variables, so what I measured was social media screen time, phone screen time, and anxiety levels. As mentioned, my method and procedure involved a longitudinal design over the course of 1 week. Day 1 marked the start of the study, and participants were pre-tested. They signed a consent form, screen time data and social media data was recorded, and anxiety levels were measured. More importantly, participants were assigned to one of the 3 experimental conditions: the self-monitor, that's the control group, screen time limits, and a grayscale display. Exactly 1 week after, on day 8, all the participants were post-tested. Participants are debriefed and they are told about the nature of the study, and their screen time data, social media data, and anxiety levels are measured once again. Additionally, compliance with the intervention is measured, so I asked participants if they kept the intervention throughout the whole week or they took it off after a couple days. In order to measure accurate phone use data, I gave participants a printed sheet of instructions that showed them how to access this data on their own phones. This way, I didn't have to rely on self-reports, but rather objective data. Participants were also given a QR code that led them to a Google Form questionnaires, and they were also given the Song Self-Rating Anxiety Scale. This is just an overview of the 3 different conditions: self-monitoring, time limits, and grayscale mode. This research study involved the participation of 33 University of Charleston students, of which 21 were females, 12 were males, 24 student athletes, 9 students, 14 international students, and 19 US citizens. The average daily phone use was of 6 hours and 19 minutes, and the average daily social media use was 3 hours and 36 minutes. So more than half the time participants spent on their phones was spent on social media on average. Results show that participants in the grayscale group spent 42 minutes less on average on social media after the intervention. To see if the differences between the pre-test and the post-test were significant, an independent t-test analysis was conducted. Statistical significance was found as indicated by the p-value of 0.028. No significant differences were found between the pre-test and the post-test for any of the other groups. Participants only complied for 3.3 days on average in the grayscale group and 5.4 days for the screen time limits group. Only 2 participants completely withdrew from the study. Overall, screen time did not change, suggesting that time usually spent on social media was spent in a different way, and future research should look at specifically how people are using their phones when they're not using social media. This research study also found that anxiety and screen time were correlated. A Pearson's correlation analysis was used to measure the relationship between screen time and anxiety levels. A positive moderate correlation was found with statistical significance, as indicated by the p-value of 0.019. What this means is that participants who spent more time on their phones were also the more anxious. These results provide even more support to the growing body of evidence linking excessive smartphone use to decreased mental health. To conclude, a grayscale display is effective in reducing time spent on social media and its effect is immediate. However, if you want to see an overall phone use decrease, these interventions must be kept on for longer periods of time. The grayscale intervention is hard to maintain, and high levels of commitment and motivation are needed, so it may be more effective as a short-term solution. Time screen limits might only work in long-term interventions. Self-monitoring one's screen time is not at all effective if we want to reduce our screen time. And lastly, anxiety and screen time appear to be correlated, so attention must be paid to phone use if we want to improve mental health outcomes. Thank you for your time.